I'm Alma Lee. I'm a psychotherapist and transformative lifestyle resiliency coach and author, and I want to help you reach your goals by teaching you how to step outside of those fear-based mindsets and into your powerful, loving self. Let's get started. Well, we are closing out the year. This is the week of Thanksgiving 2023. You got any big plans? Are you going to go and spend some time with friends and family? I hope that you have a lovely holiday, and I hope that you get to spend time with people, your loved ones, the people that you enjoy spending time with, but sometimes that's not the case. Not always, at least. Let me ask you a question. Do you ever hear people, well, maybe you've listened to my previous podcasts, or maybe you've seen my posts on social media about self-love and about how you should always love yourself. You should always take care of yourself first. You should always make sure that you are addressing your needs, because if you don't do that, you can't possibly show up for somebody else. How many times have you heard of that and just thought, that's just ridiculous? I'm not going to say anything to Alma. She's just going to push the issue. But in reality, maybe you just don't get it. Is that the case for you? Do you struggle with the concept of self-love? Is it something that's just so counterintuitive, counter-programming perhaps, that it's just something you really just cannot wrap your brain around? You know, often when we feel compelled or guilt-tripped, rather, into spending time with people that we might not normally spend time with, but we don't want to deal with the guilt of not doing that, we might find that those people tend to magnify those deeper philosophies, those nuanced things that maybe are only, they're just isolated within the family. Those are the things that pop up at the holiday where people mention that goofy thing you did when you were a kid, or they try to embarrass you, or maybe they successfully embarrass you. Maybe those close toxic family members, or maybe they're not toxic, maybe they're just ignorant. They bring up things that just kind of make you double down on how badly you see yourself. And so the concept of self-love seems far-fetched, if anything you could conceive at all. What do you think about that? That's pretty much what I want to kind of dig into today, because it's a concept that, I guess because I've been doing this work for as long as I've been doing, a lot of people don't really realize that mindset of lack of self-love becomes such an intuitive space that we have a tendency to sort of callous ourselves around it. Think of it as a wound that you just sort of learn to live around. You adapt to it as opposed to looking at it. And I want to offer up just something to consider in this short, brief podcast episode, that hopefully it's just something you can take away that will, at least, if nothing else, plant a seed of thought so that you can start to feel a little bit differently. Or at least, if you have those self-deprecating, self-hatred thoughts where you judge yourself, you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, or you feel like you have to negatively motivate yourself by saying negative, deprecating things about yourself, I want you to consider something, okay? Hear me out. Those thoughts, maybe when you wake up in the morning, maybe when you get in and out of the shower, maybe you've got some body image issues, maybe you've got some lack of self-worth, maybe you feel insecure. I think most of us do. I do too. It still comes up, but I think because of the work that I've done, it does not last. I might, on a rare occasion, catch myself judging myself or feeling bad about myself, but I pump the brakes on it pretty quickly. I've got a pretty good grasp. And the reason for that is because I have, and still continue to do, my inner wounded child shadow work. Now, you may have heard of shadow work. Shadow work essentially is just, for lack of a better word, I just not to get too elaborate, it's the things about yourself that you hide. the things that you don't want other people to see. They're your wounds, your traumas, and your shame all balled up, and you shove it back deep, you repress it, you don't shine any light on it. So that's kind of why they call it the shadow work. That's a very short, brief explanation of what it is. But we all have a shadow. All of us do. We all have things about ourselves we do not want exposed, because we don't want to be vulnerable to other people's judgments. And we would be. See, that's the thing. That's the nature of humans, is lack of empathy and lack of compassion causes us to get further traumatized, which is, it's exactly the reason why we hide those things, because we don't want to be judged. We want to protect ourselves. But who are we protecting, do you see? Now, think about the last time you had a negative thought, or maybe a mean and a hateful thought about yourself. That self-deprecation, that stuff about yourself that gets magnified, especially when you're around family who, like it or not, sometimes they feel like they are entitled to shame you and judge you, and maybe you do it to them too. Maybe it's sort of a dysfunctional sort of, dynamic that you've got going on in your family that, it's all about survival, and it's something that you brought up from your childhood, Think about it. Think about the last time you had a negative thought of self, a self-deprecating thought. Now, I want you to consider this. Imagine just walking down the street, maybe you're just, walking into a store or something, and you see a small child there, cute little kid. Describe him or her any way you want to. Imagine a small child, 5, 6 years old. Now, that last time you had that thought, that self-deprecating thought, what was it? You got it? You think about it? You think about what it was? Now I want you to imagine whatever it was that you said to yourself about yourself. I want you to imagine saying it to that little child. Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? Would you do that? Most of us would not. I would hope that you would not say something self-deprecating or harmful to a child. Now, Alma, what are you talking about? This is just getting soupy now. Now you're just getting crazy in the weeds. Well, no, not really, because that pain, that lack of worthiness, that insecurity, that's your little kid. That's your little girl or your little boy that lives inside you. That's your wounded inner child. And every time that you adapt or take on or agree with a self-deprecating idea, judgment, something that you sort of relegate in contempt toward yourself, you're saying that to that little child that was once upon a time, back in the day, very scared, very hurt, very traumatized. Yeah. So how do we stop that? How do we stop doing those negative things? How do we engage in that concept of self-love that I was talking about? Well, here's at least a snapshot. This will at least plant the seed to get you to start thinking a little bit differently. I mean, this is a lifetime worth of work, guys. Okay, this is something that you have to do intentionally. But if you don't know at first what to do, then we have to start somewhere, right? But it's just planting a seed of thought, of changed thought. So from now on, what I want you to consider is every time you are aware that you are thinking a negative thought about yourself, maybe you screw up at work, or maybe you oversleep, right? You oversleep your alarm and you're angry. You wake up because your shame has been triggered, because now you've got to explain oversleeping. Because there's a fear tied into that, right? There's a fear of judgment. Well, everybody does it. Everybody has, all humans are fallible. Everybody is, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. Some of us are a little more orchestrated and a little more better at time management than others, but we're all equally worthy and valuable, right? So why do we get angry? Why do we go into that space of judgment? Well, it's because we feel like we have to. We've been programmed to do that. But I want you to consider from now on, when that happens, I want you to imagine you. Remember when you were at your most vulnerable, when you were small, maybe 5, maybe 6 years old, when you felt scared, when you felt alone, when you felt abandoned. when you were most insecure and you didn't know which end was up, I want you to imagine hurling that insult, that pejorative mindset of the self. I want you to imagine saying that to that child. It's kind of hard when you do it that way, huh? Well, where does the self-love come from, Alma? Well, the self-love comes from the fact that you start to realize as you go through this process just how unnecessary it is. And then you start to understand yourself and why you get frustrated, why you get dysregulated. When we try to hide certain parts of ourselves, that is a sort of a defensive survivor mentality, right? Well, when we're trying to hide things, we obviously invest energy and time in protecting that shadow self and protecting that wounded inner child, because we don't want people to see him or her. We don't want people to see our dirty little secrets, the things that make us feel so vulnerable about ourselves, right? So when we invest so much energy protecting that part of ourself, we tend to focus everything on that. And so everything that we do in regards to other people is in the protection of that wounded child. So if I oversleep my alarm and I wake up and I'm late and I'm running late for work and I know I'm going to get in trouble and I know my boss is going to yell at me, I'm already anticipating the shame of that shadow self blowing to the surface, because that wounded child already believes that they're worthless, already is damaged. And I have been working so hard to keep that child hidden away into the shadows so nobody sees. But if I show up late, then I'm basically saying, yeah, that's me. I'm a bad person. See, I can't even get up on time, you know? And so we become frustrated and dysregulated and angry sometimes and defensive because we don't want people to point out our failings. Because if people point out our failings, then our shadow comes raging forward and then they can see our vulnerabilities. Am I speaking too much in the weeds here? You got it? You know what I'm saying? So ultimately, when you separate from the child, when you take the child outside of the self so that you can see the child as a third person, then you can separate the adult self. Because you, as the adult, you're the powerful one, or, you know, more powerful than the wounded inner child. I would hope, at least. And you take that child and, you know, I tell my clients, get a picture. Get a picture of yourself when you are at your most vulnerable. And then you start to build a relationship with that child. And you start pouring in all the love onto that child that you didn't receive when you were that child. And that's the seed that has to be planted to grow yourself into a fully loving person, where you love yourself, where you put your needs first, where you start really valuing yourself. Because there's nobody in their right mind is going to verbally accost a small child, so why would you do it to you? Why would you cut yourself down? Why would you beat yourself down? Why would you tell yourself that you're worthless? Because that child is not worthless. Imagine that beautiful child, that version of yourself when you were most vulnerable. And then imagine heaving those negative concepts onto that child. You can't do that. You know better. You know how painful it is. But for whatever reason, now as adults, we think it's okay because we use it as fuel. We use it to harden ourselves. We use it to create and encapsulate ourselves in our egotistical veneer to keep us protected from other people, which, yes, that does work. The ego does protect us. But it also keeps us from connecting too. It keeps us from being able to be intimate with people, with sharing with people, allowing people in to get to know us. And we can't get to know them either because a lot of times other people are doing the same things as well. You know, we're all hurting. That's one thing I've learned, is that we're all hurting. We all have something. Whether you meet somebody who appears to have everything on deck, some people are better at hiding it than others. That's all I can say to that, because I've never met a single person who didn't have some kind of a struggle with figuring it out as far as connecting with their shadow, because we all have things about ourselves that we don't want other people to know. Things about our childhood that we have shame that we don't know what to do with until we learn. And this is just an introduction. I highly recommend that if this particular episode has resonated with you on some level, then maybe this is a chance for you to really start to do some of that shadow work. And it's not a trap to say, hey, you need to go to therapy. I'm not trying to trap anybody. I just want everybody to succeed. Because if you succeed because of something that I've done, I'm living in my purpose. I'm doing what I'm being called to do. If I can challenge and encourage you to feel comfortable and safe enough and saying, you know what, I think I want to go and talk to somebody about this. I think I want to learn how to understand myself better. And I get it. You don't know what you don't know until you know it, right? And all of this was very intimidating to me because I had my mind made up years ago before I ever went into therapy. I knew that I was less than everybody else. What are you going to do? What's therapy going to do for me? I'm not worth as much as everybody else. Like, that was my cognition. Those were the schemas that I was working with. And I was a very angry young woman. But as I started to evolve and I started to learn and I started to see that I really was normal and that I had experienced some trauma and some, my insecurities and where they were rooted was from my wounded inner child experiences. I carry I don't carry, but I do have a Polaroid of myself that I keep when I do my sessions with my clients. And sometimes I'll show the picture to my clients because I don't want to be a hypocrite, and she's a sweet little girl. She's standing in front of a Christmas tree. It was, if I had to guess, it was either 1981 or 1982. And I do vaguely remember my father taking a bunch of pictures of us with his brand new Polaroid camera. And I can look at the face, in the picture, and I can see, I'm half smiling, but I can see the fear because my father was not, he just wanted to take a picture, but I could see it in my eyes. But I'm looking at that little girl, and she's just so sweet, and she deserves love. And I love her so much. And that's the thing here, and that's what I want to leave you with, is that get that picture of yourself and look at him or her and love that child. Give that child that love. And you know what? You might notice that you're going to have a profound moment. You may have a deeply emotional moment. You may become very tearful. That's okay. That's actually a good thing. It's a good thing to start to connect and stop fighting it. And connect with, that little version of you, he or she, whoever they may be. They just want to be seen. They don't want to be in the shadows anymore. They just want to know that they're okay and that they just need your reassurance. You as the adult, the strong, resilient person that you've become. And they just want to love you back. And that's how this healing journey starts. So I'll leave you with that. And I hope that you do have safe travels if you are going out of town to spend time over the holiday weekend or the holiday, Thanksgiving, Thursday, and then the weekend with your friends and with your family. And I hope that you enjoy the abundance of the holiday. And, the intention behind it is to give thanks. And I am deeply, deeply grateful for you. I'm grateful for this platform. I'm grateful for the ability to share the things that I've learned and to be able to use technology in order to positively affect and influence people's lives. And I hope to be able to continue to do that. And I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate you sharing this show too. So I'll leave you with that. Happy Thanksgiving. All right. From Fear to Love. This has been an LBM production. Please like, subscribe, and share this show. Thanks for listening.